this is Kampala DevOps Community, as you know, and the idea is to help ourselves appreciate what DevOps is and use it in our day-to-day. You may sit here now, but in the future, you will be a DevOps someday, somehow. I promise that. Of course, we want to thank our sponsors or partners, Imata. Behind the scenes, they did some good work, so we appreciate them. And then, of course, Innovation Hub, they're giving us a space. As you can see, everyone is seated comfortably, and there are no complaints so far. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, good. Go on. All right. So a little about me. As you saw in the poster, been a developer for a few years, and I've taken a while to appreciate what's there. And yeah, I always like to share what I've seen and also learn, because at the end of the day, you can't be anything without picking from people around you. Yeah, that's my GitHub, and then portfolios there as well. So when we look at the scope of what we're going to have today, we shall look at the introduction about OpenTelemetry, the scope. We'll have us looking at the observability, the architecture, the core components in it, and then later on, we should be able to see how we can integrate it in our applications. Then finally, we see some thoughts about why we should have OpenTelemetry in a system that you have, and then a demo. Hopefully, it will be live. Yeah, so OpenTelemetry. OpenTelemetry, it's an open source observability framework. What this means is a set of tools to enable you to, first of all, instrument your application that you have. Once you've instrumented it, you're able to generate telemetry data. So that could be metrics, logs. And then once you've generated it, you have to collect it somewhere, right? Because it doesn't make sense to generate and then just put it out there. So once you've collected it, then you're able to export it to different front-end observability APIs that you have. Since it's a big word, it was written to hotel, and the people who maintain it currently are Cloud Native Computing Foundation. So yeah, once we've seen what OpenTelemetry is, obviously, you saw the catchword was observability. So someone would ask, what's the importance of observability in a system? With observability, you're able to know how your system behaves. When peak hours, when is it slow, when is it high? With the telemetry, you're able to see that. Then you're able to see performance bottlenecks. For example, if you have, let me use Arsenal, since most of us are Arsenal fans. If you see the Arsenal website, when you're going to the match, you would see certain increase in trying to know who's starting, who's on the bench. So you're able to see that with telemetry without you first going through maybe talking to your developers, or let's say the managers of the website. Then it helps in troubleshooting. So if you have an e-commerce site like Jumia, you know where they have to update their catalog, and then also to manage orders. You find those are distributed systems. With OpenTelemetry, it's easier to see where an issue is. So once you've seen all of that, you're able to see the bottlenecks that you have. You're able to see the performance, the peak hours. You're able to have a reliable system that you can use to enable you move forward. Yeah. So now we'll talk about the architecture. So it starts with your application, that, as we've mentioned, and your application is trying to send telemetry data that we have, right? So that means, so we said OpenTelemetry has many standards or tools that you need. And along that means you're going to have SDK. So these SDKs give you APIs to instrument your application. Once you've instrumented, as I show you, you generate, right, that data, which you can export. And once you've exported, as you've seen, you keep on chaining up. That's the extensibility we're talking about. You keep adding things into your pipeline. So we have a collector for our telemetry that we've picked up. And then once it's there, we can again export it finally to whatever we want. Let's say it's a front-end observability dashboard or APIs for that matter, as we shall see later on. So yeah, once we've seen this, someone would say, how would it look like in real life? So we can have something like this. As we mentioned, we are using Jumia, right? It has a distributed microservice architecture. So it will have your microservices, then their shared infrastructure, whether it's on the cloud, whether if you're using Kubernetes, depending on your setup. As you saw, we have that collector. We are transmitting that telemetry data. And then finally, it will be viewed somewhere based on your setup. Okay, so we've seen the architecture. So we need to know the core components for us to start off, right? So the first part is the traces. As we shall see later on, we shall dive into details. But the idea is to see how a request is going through our system. I will use again Aseno. If they are searching for, let's say, Saka, how many goals does he have? We shall see. How long does it take for that query to happen in the database? Right? So we're able to trace what's happening. Okay, sorry. Right. Yeah, so once we have traces, yeah, we have metrics, right? So for the metrics, that means we're able to quantify how many people are searching for Saka, right? That's how we can think about it. Then finally, we have logs. So logs help us to see events happening in our system. So you could log that you're trying to search for Saka, you've gotten back a result, there's a failed login request, something like that. And then finally, as you've seen, we have these traces, we have these metrics. You need a collector. You need something that will pick up all these telemetry data that you have. Oh yes, which leads us to tracing. So as you've seen, I talked about Jumia. So that means traces can be used in a distributed system to show how you are interacting, let's say, with the cart system and then the order system. So in tracing, we have a span. So a span is a unit of work. I'll go back to Jumia. If I'm talking about orders, the time to get back the orders in the request, that's a span, right? So as you go on, you're trying to get to your cart, that's also another span. So I hope you can see where we're going. And then, of course, so a few systems that can enable us short tracing. We have Jigger and New Relic. As you know, this is open source. So that means anybody can set up their own a system to pick up these traces. So we've talked about traces, now talk about metrics. So they are used for performance analysis to know how the system works, right? The number of requests done, let's say, to search for Saka. I'm sure I'm using Saka, but he's a good boy. He's a star boy, right? Yeah, so there could be counters, gauges, or histograms. So based on the data that you have to know which graph you're going to use. As we shall later on see, that's important to relay information that can be used by anybody who is using a dashboard to observe. Then we have Prometheus and CloudWatch as examples that enable us to view these metrics. Then we go to the logs. As I said, the logs enable us to view events that are happening in our system. So yeah, there are many log ingesters that we know of. I would say there's Datadog, right, that can enable us to view those logs, and many out there. So we come to, you've seen that we've been able to trace, we've been able to pick up our metrics and the logs. So we need a collector, right? And it's a standalone service, as you saw in the architecture. It's in the pipeline there. The idea for it is to collect all these telemetry data that you've picked up. And the good thing about this, any vendor, you can choose any vendor. It's not specific that since you signed up with Datadog, you should only use Datadog. You can switch it out and then use Grafana, depending on how you want to do it. And some of the deployments, there's Sidecar. So Sidecar means you deploy the collector along your application or a gateway where you have, let's say, a distributed system. All these services push the telemetry data to the gateway. Yeah, so like I've mentioned, we've collected the data. So how do we integrate it? So OpenTelemetry enables us to, first of all, put it in our code. So whether you're using C#, JavaScript, Go, you can put in OpenTelemetry to get your data. And then all the different cloud providers, whether it is AWS, GCP, they all have integrations for it. And then finally, once you've integrated from your code to the cloud provider or hybrid or even on-prem, as we shall later on see, you can push to any observability front end that you want. So yeah, now we come back to the fun part, implementing. So we've seen how to architect, we've seen how to collect. Now we need to implement in our solution. So there are 4 simple steps. So the first step would be to install the SDK, as you saw, right, in the architecture. So once you've done that, you instrument, obviously, for an existing solution, we assume at least you have logs so that you can be able to kickstart your project to have telemetry data. And once that is done, you're able to configure your collector as I showed you, because something has to collect it before you can finally then go ahead and export your data. I hope you're good so far. All right. Okay, so someone will ask, why are we doing all of this? We're architecting, we're implementing, right? But you saw from the beginning, we saw the importance of observability. So it leads us to the benefits. So the first one, as you saw, it doesn't matter whether you're using Go, JavaScript, or C#. It's the same set of APIs that's going to enable you to view your traces, the metrics, and then the logs. And that's a good thing. So that means whether you're moving, even Python as well, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. So let's say you're moving from Python setup to a Java setup. It's the same set of APIs. Then, yeah, it is standardized. That means nothing is going to change out of the blue. If the cognitive foundation that are currently monitoring and aiding for creating of this OpenTelemetry decide to move to another way, everyone will have agreed to it. So it won't be out of the blue, which is a good thing for a developer. And then, of course, the DevOps. Then, as you've seen, you can use Grafana, you can use Datadog, anybody, because at the end of the day, it's all OpenTelemetry data. And then, as you saw, if you have a distributed microservice setup, it is easier for you to monitor. And then finally, you can have, whether you're on-prem or hybrid or cloud, your data will always flow. It doesn't have to be specific. And then finally, for the vendors that are able to consume this OpenTelemetry data, they don't have to set up development teams for different programming languages to try to pick up this data. Yeah, so there are a few thoughts. As you can see, that's a simple setup for a full gateway on AWS. As you can see, it's a bit complex. There's many things that you have to set up. So initially, it's daunting to set up because, as you can see, for just one gateway, you have a cluster that you have to have for collectors, and then subnetting to ensure that the data goes in. So you should keep that in mind. And then there's a performance overhead, as you've seen. You will need to account for memory and CPU. So that it works as expected. Then, as you said, they keep on maintaining. Currently, OpenTelemetry, it's in version 2. So that means you have to keep up with the standards so that you don't miss out on the new tweaks that have been put in. And then finally, so it's just version 2. So that means there were legacy applications that were set up, let's say in the early 2000s or even the late 90s, if they do exist. So to try to make them adapt to the standard, it can be daunting because you have to do it manually, setting up those traces and the spans to ensure that the telemetry data goes through. Of course, privacy is needed. Since you're sending out this data in the logs, whether it's in the spans, so you should be able to keep mindful of that so that PI data does not go through. And then finally, the cost. Logs are going through, right? The metrics are going through. So that's a lot of data. So you should have a mechanism to cap on the amount of logs that you should have. And if possible, you can do adaptive sampling so that you don't send everything. Otherwise, the bill can go up depending on the user, on the vendor that you're using, sorry. So yes, as you saw, I was trying to show you different options that are there to view the traces, to view the metrics, and then the logs. However, Microsoft created an Aspire dashboard. What it does, you're able to see your logs in a single view, the traces as well, and then finally, the metrics. So they've reduced the burden that you'd have to try to pick something for tracing, something for the metrics, and then the logs. So all of that is in one place, and it is open source, which we all have. So that's an option that you can use so that you don't have to try to see what you're trying to push out. Then also Grafana, they also did something better as well. They also created the same. You're able to view, as we shall see, the logs, the metrics, and the traces. As you can see, we have the collector, and based on whatever you're sending out, whether it is the metrics, the traces, or the logs, and even profiling, right? We're able to view that all in one go. So you don't have to set them up yourself as you would do in a Docker Compose file. So yeah, Grafana went ahead and proposed a better solution if you are in cloud, since we are trying to move to the cloud stage. So you could have your application as you saw. You've instrumented it very well. You're pushing out the logs to the collector, and then this collector can then send it to a Grafana instance that has the different allocations as you saw, looking for the logs, Prometheus for the metrics, so that you're able to view your logs without hassle. So yeah, we can pause for now as we wait for the demo. Thank you. We'll come back from that short break. So I'm going to demo something small. I will use Arsenal again, since they're the champions. So we'll have an API that shows the stats of an Arsenal main team for now. They will be sending that data to our collector. So I'll first use a Aspire dashboard, and we should be able to view something there. Then I'll swap it out with Grafana to show that at the end of the day, you choose the vendor you want, but the instrumentation remains the same. You set it up, you choose whoever you want at the end. So I'm using Docker. I think Docker is good. You don't have to do a lot. You just spin up the image and you're good to go. So we'll first spin up the Aspire dashboard. Okay. Oh, wait. This. Yeah. For now. So yeah, as you can see, it does not take a lot to set it up. Let's see. Okay. So I've set it up so that I can just use a token, but ideally you would have to set up some more rigorous authentication options, like using the API key to enable secure login and access to it. Epic token. So yeah, as you can see, we can have the structured logs, the traces, and the metrics. I'll go ahead and spin up the API locally, since we are trying to test it out locally and see what's there. While we are at it, I showed you the steps that we had to do. So OpenTelemetry, they have a website as well where they show you, and depending on your paths, whether you were dev or you in DevOps, you can get started. But for our case, since we are developing, we're trying to instrument our application. That's the path I will go to. And if I expand this, as you see, depending on your language, the setups are there. For example, if we use Python, as you can see, we add the API, we add the SDK. And then once you're done, you're able to go into the code and yeah, see what you're exporting. So I'll go to the code. I will use C#. So of course, the idea is to add packages to your solution first. So a simple search for OpenTelemetry should bring up the packages that you need. So they've done all the hard work for you. So all you need to do is to install them into your already existing application that you have, which I did. So once that's done, so we talked about logs. For C#, there's a structured logging library called Serilog. Java has Enfolog. I'm sure even Python has the same. There's an equivalent for it to enable you to have structured logs, which we've already added. Like go up here. So yeah, I've added Solilog to ensure that I have structured logs to show up in my dashboard. And even Solilog also offers you a package to ensure that telemetry data is sent, and all I have to do is configure the endpoint. But since I'm using Aspire dashboard, it only uses gRPC, so that's why it is set for that. And then, Kelvin, you asked about applications. So by setting the application name for every application, we're able to know which application is sending the data. Then you can trace it out, and then of course see the logs for each. So now we come to the OpenTelemetry part, right? So we start with the metrics. As you saw, you just add the different APIs that you need. For this case, we need the .NET Core and then the client. And as you've seen, the same pattern. We're adding the endpoint, we're adding the protocol used. It's the same with tracing. You add the APIs, SDKs. You add the endpoint, the protocol. So as you've seen, it is intuitive and it's the same process. So nothing is changing. And then finally, once we add the tracing, the exporter, it's the endpoint protocol. So very easy. And that's it. So we'll have to spin up our application and see if we can get any data for now. So let me add a database there. Okay. So I'll go ahead and run it. Okay. Right. So if I come back to my dashboard already, as you can see, we have the logs that we wanted to show. And if I expand this, we're able to see more data. That would, sorry, come back here. We're able to see more data in regards to where it's coming from. And as you see, we added our service name, which is a demo API. And then, of course, there's more information about where this telemetry data is coming from. Then if you have any traces, as you saw, we're able to see. If I drill down, I can even view more logs in that particular trace that I want that are associated to it. So as you've seen, we are already getting telemetry data without doing much in our code. We're just adding the SDKs, and out of the box, we are seeing this data. Okay. So let's see if we can find a few players currently in asset. Okay. So yeah, we see Ryan and all of those. So all that is being picked up as we move forward in our dashboard. So you can see how long it took, right? So that's the real-time observability we're talking about happening. And then we can even see the logs that are associated to that particular instance of that happened, where we retrieved the players, the number, the logs that even the execution that went straight to the database, although this ideally shouldn't be in production. But we're trying to show that for every step that has happened in our system, we're able to trace it, whether in the logs or the traces. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, we have some logs. So yeah, we also have the metrics, as you can see, real time. So yes, that's how easy it is to set up OpenTelemetry. There's little on overhead for anyone. What is left, of course, is now to try to reduce on this number of logs because some of them are not needed. But yeah, we just wanted to show you that your system can generate these logs, can generate these traces, and then finally the metrics that can come from it. And it's free.
in the language. I can aspire to it separately. And maybe let's say I have to have four, 500 KPI.
Yeah.
I need to be to just only the reach to say the loads Spanish.
Yes. As you saw, come back to this. All you need to do is set the exporter options. You set the endpoint. So ideally, that would be where you've uploaded or deployed your Aspire dashboard. And then, of course, you set the protocol for Aspire, it's specifically gRPC. Yeah, it should be able to pick it up. And the way you see this is how you would go in your Java application. You would add the different SDKs, then you pick the rightful APIs and set the config as expected. Yeah.
Yeah, you can. Because sometimes you just the limits. No benefit is boring. The chats.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, so they did, as you can see, they have a graph. They have a few there, here and there. But of course, it's not as extensive as Grafana is.
And then you just want to go there, see what's happening without going so much details. Like I just want to come on my let's say Aspire dashboard. I see the request idea rates what, then I go back. I can be just there to wait going to
Yeah, yeah. So yes, so those are some of the limitations that are there. The vendor that is confirming the data is the one who restricts you. And in the case for Aspire, they just give you these options. So the only option is to come straight to the metrics tab so that you can see the graphs that you want. Yeah.
this. In my yes, very motivations where I said maybe if the loads that are coming in, if I wait for their if it's in their large so that I take action.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, those are the features in the pipeline. Yeah, for Aspire. Yeah, unfortunately.
So how it appears like before you take it before you take a solution, an advanced observability, like an advanced observability solution. It's like providing like where to start from, like locally how you can see things locally. That's what I'm also saying. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's like enhanced as what you think across data that you get. Yeah, it looks like troubleshooting locally how things are working, how where the trace of coding out, how does it look. So that's how it looks like. It's still beautiful.
Yeah.
It's almost small, because we have from Anna. The one to unpaid version and then we have the paid version, the cloud version. Because when you go to the cloud version, it has more features than the one that you have. So that's why it's more than
It's purely open source, so there is no enterprise option for it. Yeah, and it is limited as you've seen it. Yeah, but they are adding more features to it bit by bit.
Like right now, you have that point what's not the best.
Yeah, yes.
What's this question? What do I have to say?
Yeah, but that's true. But
Where I can collect from there.
yeah, you can create. Yeah, so as you can see, this is a different endpoint from this one, as you can see, and it shows the time it took. So already on this duration, you can see there is a difference. So if something is taking longer, right, you would know. Right? So in its limited capacity, we're able to see that, yeah, this one, I should know why, right? So that's when you would trickle down to it and see what is happening along, what's really going on, basically. But yeah, it's still limited, but you will see.
One thing they have done is it's in those like local development, whereby you can get that information quickly. And then address it and okay, the logs have been there, but it's not being like that. So we're overlaying.
Yeah, that's true.
Like local for local development.
That's true.
That's where I've been good enough for local development.
Yeah. Yes. But as we're going to see, Grafana also has an option.
Yeah.
And it is up to the standard that we would want. Yeah. Yeah. So this was to show you that yes, we can get the metrics, the traces, but then there's something better. Right?
Yeah, actually, I'm also looking at that. That's where primary focus is enhancing local development experience. Like simplifying management. Really good for local development.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. That is true. Okay. So let me tear down Aspire and we see what happens in Grafana. Stop this. Yeah, you can also delete. So let me start the Grafana option and we see what's there. So yeah, as the previous attendees have been talking about, has more features, right? As you can see, complex. And as I mentioned, you can set up your own dashboards to pick out specifically what you want. But for our case, we're just going to look at the drill down. The idea of the drill down, it should show the traces, the logs, and the metrics. So I'll go ahead and spin up the API, and we see. Yeah. So as you can see already, there's a huge difference, right? They already set up all these graphs for you to see what's happening in your system. Unlike in Aspire, as we saw, you still view the same logs as you would want. And then, of course, the traces as they come in. And they also added a profiling space as well. to profile your different services. So I'll go ahead and get a few players, right? Send it to, okay. So yeah, as you can now see, the traces come in, and Grafana has more options, right? We're able to view it's more detailed and better, right? You can even view the same logs for that particular span. So yeah, Grafana is a better option. And out of the box, you don't need to set up the Loki, the Prometheus, all of that in their image. They give that for you, and you can still use it in production for free. But as you've seen, I didn't change anything in code. All I changed was the collector. So that's the beauty of OpenTelemetry. You can choose to find which one fits your use case.
In my firewalls, some assistance, they possibly can give us from firewall, from the switches, they possibly can get that and review look at it.
Yeah, that's possible. Let me see. Come back here. Back to this. Yeah. So yes. So as you can see, it would be in the shared infrastructure, right? Yeah. So long as you've set, as you've seen, the export endpoint should show up in your collector. Yeah, it will use it based on the collector as well. Because if the collector is only accepting gRPC, then you have to send it as gRPC data. Yeah. So it's collecting. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it for me for now. The idea was to show you what OpenTelemetry is, how easy it is to set it up in any application, and using different vendors to view the data. And it's all about trying to see which one fits your use case at the end of the day. But the data will always remain the same based on how you've implemented it in your application or any source, right? Whether it is firewall. Yes, the connectors. You choose the one you want.